Learning to play old jazz can be tough. Formal jazz education rarely covers pre-bop styles in a practical way, and it can be hard to find local mentors. It would be easy to get the idea that old jazz styles are defunct, but there are gigs around for musicians who are interested. But how does one develop the skills? Learning on the gig can be confusing and frustrating, and developing the ears to hear through the older recording technologies can take time, especially where rhythm sections are concerned. This video is for rhythm section musicians with experience in more contemporary styles who might be interested in getting into jazz from the 1920s and 30s. It's from my point of view as a specialist in this music, but not an expert on each instrument. These thoughts come from my experience, and they're not intended to be a complete guide. The best thing you can do to improve your old jazz playing is to become an expert. This means listening to all the records as closely as you can, researching the musicians and their playing techniques, and of course playing a load of gigs yourself. Owning all the fancy vintage gear and wearing a bow tie won't get you anywhere if you haven't thought clearly about how you should sound. Assuming you're not an expert already, one important thing to understand is that jazz from the 1920s and 30s is a broad range of different styles and approaches, each blending indistinctly into the others. There's a big difference between late 20s Ellington and mid 30s Ellington, for instance. Most current bands playing old jazz play a variety of these styles, so you should consider how you might want to vary your playing and even your equipment from tune to tune. Old jazz can be complex and virtuosic, but if you're not an expert, it's usually best to keep it simple. This is especially true for rhythm sections. Consider your main goal to be creating as effective a rhythmic groove as you can, not dazzling the horn players with your harmonic invention or complicated fills. Those techniques have their place in adding contrast and flair, but if you're not an expert, you might not know where that place is yet. Consider this. The rhythm section has to be creating a consistent rhythmic groove before deviation from that groove serves any purpose. If that sounds boring or simplistic, then you haven't considered how difficult it is to achieve, or how rewarding. Jazz pianists who are new to old jazz styles might benefit from considering their role as broadening the rhythmic and harmonic foundation. The way this is achieved varies from style to style, but if you're in doubt, consider playing something like this during ensembles. I've seen this referred to variously as padding, paddling, and pedaling, and it's gloriously effective in many old jazz contexts. Focus on locking in with the other rhythm instruments and varying dynamics and intensity while you do it. You can add more stylistically appropriate fills and harmonic complexity as you become an expert. In a past video, I discussed the sublime effect of Dave Wilborn's strict 4-to-the-bar banjo playing with McKinney's Cotton Pickers. But there's a surprising variety of rhythmic approaches within jazz banjo playing. Players like Lou Black and Elmer Snowden rarely stick to playing one chord per beat, instead syncopating and playing eighth-note shuffles and triplet rolls. But if you're not yet an expert, it might be best to keep these fills to a minimum. Instead, consider how you can get the rhythm to bounce rather than it feeling like an anvil. The banjo can bring a rhythm section alive or really drag things down. Experiment with different lengths of ring for each chord between strokes, and keep the accents light. And if you're a guitarist doubling on banjo and you don't like it, consider why that might be and how you can make it better. Because if you're not enjoying your banjo playing, it's likely the rest of the rhythm section isn't either. many guitarists get into old jazz via the incredible Django Reinhardt. As wonderful as Django is, his rhythmic style is only one possible approach. Consider how you can vary your rhythmic feel by listening to a broad range of players: Teddy Bunn, Dick McDonough, Carl Kress, Danny Barker, Carmen Maestrin. As with banjo, consider how long you let each chord ring and the accents you give specific beats. Note, for instance, how Eddie Lang's rhythm sits neatly on all 4 beats. When getting into old jazz on the double bass, it's tempting to treat every tune as an opportunity to show off the slapping you've been practicing. Steve Brown, Wellman Bro, Pops Foster, and others certainly slapped a lot, but I'd suggest the first thing you might want to consider is the spaces between the notes. Most jazz bass players from the 20s and 30s preferred a strong acoustic sound without much sustain, and their propulsive force comes from being able to clearly hear the beginning of each note. You want a dud-dud-dud-dud, not a ning-ning-ning-ning-ning. This will make it easier for the rhythm section to lock in together. In terms of note choice, old jazz bass lines usually focus on the chord tones rather than walking lines, even in swing bands. Playing 2 beats per bar is a skill that takes practice. Be aware that it can easily sound corny, especially if you add a lot of grace notes. Tuba players getting into old jazz may not be used to playing in a rhythm section. It's vital you realize your job is about creating a steady pulse. This can be tricky, as the physics of the instrument seem to create a delay in getting the notes all the way out the bell. Concentrating on accenting the beginning of each note and keeping the notes reasonably short can help to avoid dragging. Tuba notes that seem to bulge in the middle can make it feel like you're behind the beat, even when you aren't. On the other hand, bass saxophone players often come to their instrument from the other saxophones, and it can be difficult to adjust to playing a foundational role rather than a melodic one. Try to focus on simple bass lines to start with. Learn to work with the rhythm section before interacting with the horns. It used to be a real challenge to learn how to play 20s and 30s drums because of difficulties hearing the instruments clearly on record. With clearer remastering, widespread availability of film footage, and resources like my friend Nick Ball's Drums in the 20s website, things are now a bit clearer. It might help to approach drumming in old jazz as conceptually like playing in a pop covers band. Your role is to keep the groove together so that everyone feels good, with your own creative expression as a secondary concern. Don't do very much. Leave out the hi-hat for 20s styles, for instance. Learning to play good press rolls and finding a cymbal or two that sound right will go a long way. And when you do play fills, Consider your contributions as punctuation for what the other instruments have already said. Oh, and a word on the washboard. While making noise on a washboard is simple, making music on one is a different matter entirely. I'd recommend leaving it to experienced drummers. A good old-style rhythm section should sound great just playing along by itself, and not wait for horn players to provide the inspiration. It should work as a unit and focus on getting the right feel for each song. And I do mean feel rather than tempo. My observation is that when rhythm sections are cooperative and know the different sounds they are trying to create, tempo usually looks after itself.